All right. Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us. We are just opening things up, so I see some folks are starting to come into the room. That's fantastic. We're going to give it a few minutes, let some folks have time to settle in, so just hold tight. All right, we got a few more coming in here. I'm going to give it another 30 seconds or so before we get started. Thank you so much to those of us who've joined on time. Appreciate you. All right, we are holding steady, so I'm going to go ahead and get started. Thank you so much. Welcome to our virtual event this afternoon or evening or morning, depending upon where you are, where you're tuning in from. My name is Adam Sapp. I'm the Director of Admission at Pomona College. I'm joined by four fantastic colleagues who are here with me. Before we get too far into the program, though, I would love to just remind you that you're joining a live event for military affiliated students. We are recording tonight's event, but you will not show up. Only the speakers will appear on the recording. Let me give my colleagues a minute to introduce themselves and we'll continue with our program. Patricia?
Welcome, everybody. I'm so glad you're able to join us this weekend. My name is Patricia Way, and I'm an admissions officer at Yale, and I read first-year applications, transfer applications, and I'm director of admissions for our Eli Whitney Students Program, which is a program for non-traditional students, and I'm director of Veterans Outreach.
All right, Lexi?
Hi, everyone. I'm very excited to see you all here tonight. My name is Lexi Hurd. My full name's Alexandra, if you ever see my email. I use she, her pronouns. I'm an Amherst alum. I work at Amherst College as well. I'm one of the associate deans, and I've worked with to direct our transfer program and also run our military connected student program for the past 10 years. Really excited to speak with you.
All right, Alex Buston.
Hi, everyone. Alex Buston from Princeton. I'm a senior associate dean of admission and also director of the transfer program for admission, as well as military and veteran admission. And I'm really excited to be here with you all tonight.
And last but not least, our final Alex.
Hi, also Alex here. I work at Williams College. I manage transfer and veteran admission. I'm also a Williams alum, class of 2011, and I'm thrilled to have this conversation with you all tonight.
All right, thanks everybody. Really, again, so grateful that you're willing to tune in with us tonight as we move through what I think is going to be an exciting program for you. We have some common slides that we're going to talk about, and then we're going to move into individual institutional presentations. Then we've got some submitted questions that Alex Buston from Princeton is going to lead us through. And then of course we've got some live chat, live Q&A going on, which I'll talk about that process in a minute. I think it's really important to address this question, which you may all be wondering yourselves. Why do the five of us travel together? We think it's very clear, but just to make sure it's clear to you, we wanted to take a minute and just tell you why. The reality is we all five are global institutions with wide reach. We are all committed to the highest levels of research and scholarship. We devote considerable financial and human capital resources to providing our students a superb undergraduate education. We are really generous with our financial aid for military affiliated students, and you'll learn more about that in a minute. And frankly, last but not least, I mean, we like each other. I've been working with this group now for a couple of years, and I can tell you, you will not meet a more dedicated and passionate group of individuals when it comes to recruiting those in the military, those affiliated with the military, to our institutions. I know some of you joining us are veterans. Others might be active duty. Some of you also might be military dependents or parents or college counselors. We're really happy that you're all here tonight. We just want to be clear that we'll mostly be addressing issues relevant to the veteran and military affiliated community who are seeking undergraduate degrees. Everybody's welcome. We're thrilled you're here. Some of us have graduate programs, but we are not graduate school admissions officers. And so we're happy to connect you with those folks should you have an interest, but we will not be addressing that specifically tonight. We're going to put up a slide here. This is our partners slide, and I really want to linger on this for just a second. I think this is a great slide, maybe take a picture of or a screen grab of. We really want to thank our collaborators right now, Service to School, the Leadership Scholars Program, and the Warrior Scholars Program. They have all worked so hard to promote tonight's event. We have many wonderful transfer and community college counselors as well who have helped spread the word to the military affiliated community. Thank you so much. We know there's so many educators out there that are working in what are often difficult circumstances to continue to get information out to those who need it, and we're grateful for our partners today. We do have a Q&A box for questions. So we have a chat box, but we'd prefer you don't use the chat box. If you could put your questions in the Q&A box, that would be great. We will get to them over the course of our chat later, but we'll also be answering them, try to answer them live as we move through the presentation. If you have a direct question for a particular institution, you can certainly note that. Most of the questions probably are general for a general audience, but if you have a specific question, you can put that in the chat box too. And finally, we really just want to acknowledge that we're coming to you virtually. We, in pre-COVID times, did this programming on the ground at military bases and community colleges around the country, and that was great, but we're thrilled to be coming to you virtually as well. But the reality is we're coming to you virtually because we are in the middle of two pandemics, and we want to acknowledge both the global health crisis and the national pandemic of racism in this country. We hope you are safe and you are coping. We hope your loved ones are safe and coping in this moment. We think today is going to be chock full of information. We're going to try to run for about 75 to 85 minutes, and so stick with us for the length of the program. We want to go ahead and get started now with some common slides. And with that, I'll have Alex move the slides. Thank you. So I want to start by really kind of diving a little bit more deeply into this idea of the liberal arts and what this means. We have decided that this is something that we believe in, and in order to do that, we are absolutely committed to certain kinds of things, and we have put those topics into we believe statements, and we really just want to walk through them because they're so central. We believe that in interdisciplinary learning, and we believe that diverse voices add real value. We believe in learning beyond the major. We think that lots of different kinds of classes supplement the major. You might have a topic of interest, but we believe in surrounding that area of interest lots of other kinds of courses and thinking about things from a multidisciplinary and interdisciplinary perspective. We believe in diversity, and that includes many different kinds of diversity: racial and ethnic diversity, geographic diversity, diversity of first language, nation of origin, and also life experience. We think and know that small classes are catalysts. We all pride ourselves in our low average class sizes and low student to faculty ratios because we think that the conversations you have with your professors, the conversations you have with your fellow students in class are much better if they're in small discussion-based environments to really do the learning right. We also think that not all learning occurs in class. You are going to hear tonight about 5 institutions that really understand residential education and what it means to learn beyond the boundaries of the classroom. This might be extracurricular activities or internships or study abroad. It might be research in a laboratory or in a far-off destination. All of us know that learning outside of the classroom is really key if you are going to use that learning as you move through your life and your career, the learning in the classroom plus the learning outside the classroom. It's that combination that's really dynamic. And we also believe in the contributions of transfer students and the contributions of our military affiliated students. Some of you tonight might be in a current community college using your benefits, trying to make it through that first year or two of your associate's degree. That's fantastic. You might come in as transfer students, and we really appreciate you. Some of you might be currently enlisted and you have a contract date that's a year out or 6 months out, and you might be trying to figure out what your next step is and should be, and we appreciate that as well. Some of you may not come in as transfers, you may come in as first years. That military perspective, that life perspective, no matter which branch it is, we appreciate your service, we thank you for your service, and your service mattered. And it will matter in our application review, and it will matter once you're on our campus. We're going to talk a little bit more about that later tonight. So with that, we'll continue the discussion, and I'll invite my colleague Lexi to come on and talk a little bit more.
Thank you for that, Adam. And you know, a lot of what I'm going to say is kind of doubling down on what the liberal arts really is. And I think the bigger question that many of you are thinking about in your mind is, you know, what is that going to mean for me with a liberal arts background in terms of what I might want to do afterwards? So, you know, a similarity that we all have, the 5 of us together, is that even though some of us are universities and some of us are colleges, at the undergraduate level, we all focus and our mission is truly in the liberal arts and sciences. So that is a broad, deep, and complex sort of set of skills. So we hope that our students all graduate with a set of tools and skills as opposed to a specific training in a specific career path or in a specific vocation. So although our institutions also vary in size, as Adam was mentioning, we all really do value small class sizes, very small student to faculty ratios, and we do very much rely on that dialogue and the close colloquy between and among students, staff, and faculty. Service members and veterans are a vital voice and perspective as a part of that. And although our institutions don't have very, very large numbers of student veterans and military affiliated students at this time, the reason that we spend our time here is because we realize that that voice is really important, and it's a voice that we were missing, frankly, from our classrooms and our communities for quite some time. So our professors very much enjoy working with our student veterans. They find that many of our student veterans are very dedicated, purposeful, coming to education again with a kind of renewed vigor that is not always seen among some of our traditionally aged students. And that is true across all of the branches of the military and all of the job roles of the military, of all the students that I've happened to work with through you know, the 10 years that I've been at Amerson working with our student veterans and service members. So, you know, our education really is only as valuable as the range of voices and identities and the intersections of those different identities that we have that are available to hear. So that's been a large part of why I've enjoyed working with this population. I know that that is true of my other colleagues on the panel here. So I just wanted to kind of double down on that message too. In terms of what the liberal arts offers, even though it does have the word arts in there, it does have the word liberal as well. It's liberal, and it's because it's got a broad set of different things that you might study. So humanities, social sciences, the natural sciences, foreign languages, arts, and that might be dance, theater, music. You know, all of those different disciplines are dedicated to thinking big and broad and critically about the intersections of various different forces and actions on those forces. And so that's true whether you're in a science lab, or that's true whether you're thinking about economics or political science, or even in the arts at a lot of our institutions. You know, you're doing some critical theory work in terms of how is this art created, the techniques that might be used in addition to just the production aspect of it. So we do a lot of work at Liberal Arts Institution of focusing on the theoretical foundations of disciplines. So like these big ideas, these forces that sometimes we can see, but sometimes we can't see, that are kind of governing the world around us from a lot of different perspectives. And then we also focus on the application of those theories, and that is student research. And although we are all liberal arts focused, we have many opportunities for our undergraduate students to engage in research on our campuses. And that might be your own research in the form of a thesis or something like that, but also research with our esteemed professors on our campuses as well. And that is true regardless of what it is that you might want to study. So the sciences or the humanities, the social sciences, there's many different ways to engage and try to apply some of that theory work and that critical thinking and the problem solving that you're doing to real world situations to figure that out. I'll also do a quick note that we're residential campuses. That does not mean that you need to live on our campuses, and we all have opportunities and students on our campuses that live off campus, but spend most of their time on our campuses. So even if you are not living in our dorms in a traditional sense, we do have our students that we're looking for, and this was a question that came in ahead of time, or beyond the academics, what are the things that you guys are really looking for in some of your students? And we look for students to really be engaged, to want to ask some of these questions, not just in a classroom and kind of as a get in, get out, check it off the list kind of thing, but because there's a really deep meaning to that. So with that, we look for students that are open to feedback, openness to new perspectives, thoughts, ideas, willing to take some risks. What's outside of your comfort zone? What might I want to try? What is your response to failure? If you try something that doesn't work out, do you pick yourself back up and try again or try something new? But that real curiosity engagement piece is something that I'll talk about. And that's not just in the academic realm, although certainly it is there, but also in the other aspects of how you engage on different campuses. So our students on our campuses do not see education as something to cross off a to-do list. They see it as something that, they look forward to being immersed in it, something that is 24/7 kind of thing, and a kind of experience that's going to stay with them for quite some time. Moving on to think about outcomes, that sounds great, utopic even. So what does that mean for me, like when I'm actually trying to think about what I might want to do afterwards? Studying philosophy sounds really interesting and actually really cool, but what do I translate that into in terms of an actual career path? And the answer is a lot of them. There's a lot of different things that you can do, and that's a huge, huge benefit of the liberal arts, is that you're not trained in a specific vocation, and so you have a training in how to be a critical thinker, how to be a problem solver, how to ask really good questions, how to approach something that you know nothing about, but have this confidence in yourself that you can really dissect that and ask a lot of really good questions about what might be going on there to learn a lot about it, and in some ways, often, see it in a completely different perspective. And so that really lends itself to the flexibility and the adaptability that many different industries, job roles, global things are really looking for as the world is, having all of these different complex demands on itself. So there's a lot of things that you might do. Many of our graduates graduate and try different career paths, work in different industries. That's a very common thing to do, because you can pivot as the world demands, as technology changes, as new different job roles are needed. We have wonderful career centers. These are places that you're going to go to not just to get internships or jobs, although certainly that's a large critical piece of what they might do. They will help you think about graduate school opportunities. And I know that many of you may be thinking about maybe going to medical school or law school or getting an MBA. And if you look at some of our undergraduate majors, you may not see them represented there. And so our career center really does help guide our students and say, if there are specific classes that you might want to take, they can help you think about that. But for many different careers, there's not specific classes, but help you think about how do you translate the skill set that you're gaining in the liberal arts or the experiences that you've had previously with serving in the military to internships, research opportunities, graduate school. We have wonderful alumni networks as well. So a lot of opportunities to engage with people who've walked these roads before. Many of our alumni who have served in the military are very excited about these initiatives that we all have on our campuses and are coming out of the woodwork to really, really do mentoring with some of our undergraduate veteran students as well to tell them about, the different things that they've tried, or to just be an ear for you as you're thinking about the career process as well. So we have excellent job placement rates, 95% or so job placement rates within 6 months of graduation. Over 80% of our students will go to graduate school within 5 years of graduating. And at that juncture is when many of them are choosing very vocation-oriented graduate school programs, so the MBA or the JD and things like that. And what I'll just say as well is that, I'd love to give you some examples of what people are doing. Before I do that, and they sound really lofty, I just want to say one thing, which is that almost all the students that I've worked with, they considered themselves normal people. They didn't think of themselves as like, oh my gosh, I'm going to graduate and then be the next, researcher at this large hospital and things like that. But that's what a lot of them have found themselves doing. So many of them just consider themselves sort of a regular guy, is what I've heard from many of them. But some examples of what our students are off doing now, and this is a representative list of the 5 of our institutions. Some of our students have won very prestigious scholarships, a Gates Cambridge scholarship, and doing some PhD work in psychology. We have students that are financial analysts in various different business and private equity firms. We have multiple students who are attending medical schools across the United States, students who have graduated with their MBA and their JD, and then some, just kind of very interesting intersections. So those who are going on to get master's degrees in environmental engineering, for instance, those who are joining the Peace Corps. So lots of options. I'm going to stop there and hand it off to my colleague to tell you a little bit about the financial aid process.
Thanks, Lexi. So next we'll touch on a topic that I know is important to all of us and certainly to the students in the room, which is financial aid and affordability. And I'll start by first saying that all of the institutions are here traveling together, as Adam kind of made note of, because we value affordability and because we really prioritize financial aid. That has always been true for us and will continue to be true as we move forward. Even given the circumstances of a difficult pandemic, we will continue to offer the same amount of financial aid as we always have. And we all have very generous financial aid programs. We're really able to think on a holistic level about the needs of our students and about the costs that they may be facing, and to really be able to address those as comprehensively as we possibly can. We really all have a focus on grants as well, so making sure that you're getting the kinds of financial aid packages that are not going to leave you with high amounts of loans, but really be primarily focused on, if not completely focused on, money that you don't have to pay back after college. Our financial aid programs also really consider the cost of attendance. So really thinking very carefully, again, about all of the different needs that you'll have. So certainly tuition and the cost of classes, but beyond that as well, including things like the cost of housing, the cost of food, living expenses, potentially travel back and forth to another home. All of those things that may be kind of charges that you're facing as you choose to move away from wherever you're calling home now to go and attend our campuses. Those will be factored into the financial aid process to make sure that we're addressing those to the extent that you need, and to make sure that we really truly are an affordable option for you. And I'll just address the fact too that we are all private colleges, and that many of us encounter the stereotype from lots of folks and from students certainly, that because we are private colleges, we're just too expensive. There's no way that you could possibly afford us. The price of of attending our universities just seems way too high. But I really want to just debunk that myth right here on the get-go and just say that based on everything I've just said, and I'll continue to kind of explain this, but we really are often the most affordable option for students. Often we're even more affordable than your local public institutions, and that's because of our financial aid programs. While our costs may be higher than some public institutions, the financial aid that we're able to offer often is quite competitive, if not even better and more comprehensive than some of our other institutions out there. So really making sure that you're thinking carefully about that component of things, not just the cost that's listed on the website, but also what is the financial aid program being offered here. And again, all of us here today have very generous financial aid programs. We're also very generous with offering fee waivers for the application process. And so if there is a cost for applying to our colleges or other costs that may come up along the application process, almost always, if you ask us, we'll be able to provide a fee waiver to make sure that you're not having to be burdened by a charge that you can't handle. And for some of us, the application is automatically free for veterans or active duty folks, for military affiliated folks generally. The transfer application might be automatically free. So there may be no charge at all, but generally when there is too, we really encourage students to reach out and ask about fee waivers, because almost always you'll hear a yes. For veteran benefits specifically, we also have the Yellow Ribbon Program. We are all partners of the Yellow Ribbon Program and participate. We all have very generous amounts of available spots for the Yellow Ribbon Program. We have very generous amounts of matching funds available to make sure that if you want to take advantage and if you qualify to take advantage of this benefit as well, you're absolutely able to if you come to our campuses. With the post 9/11 GI Bill benefits, we are able to provide students a lot of flexibility there. And so what that really means is that you have the option of using your post 9/11 GI Bill benefits towards the cost of attendance. And even if you choose to do that, often we continue to offer you some institutional aid even beyond those post 9/11 GI Bill benefits to really make sure, again, that we're being as comprehensive as possible in covering your cost of attendance. But you also have the option to not use your post 9/11 GI Bill benefits, to hold on to those for a later time, and to instead be able to just solely depend on our institutional aid. If you choose to do that, if you choose to not use your post 9/11 GI Bill benefits, then we will meet your need to the same extent that we already would, just through institutional aid instead. So it's really totally up to you to choose what option works best for you. And we are honest when we're saying that both options are available to you at our campuses. And all of this consideration, all of this, these pieces of financial aid and how much money you may need or not need are totally separate from the admission process for us. So we are all need blind, which means that we do not consider your amount of need as part of the application process. Those two things are kept separate. And ultimately, with admission, honestly, as well as with financial aid, we really focus on having a very student-centered, individualized process. That's really one of the benefits that you get at attending these kind of smaller institutions and being a part of our tight-knit communities, is that we're really able to deal with you on a kind of one-on-one basis, to be able to have those conversations with you one-on-one, to be able to answer questions with you when you're kind of confused about parts of the financial aid process. And to also, as we're putting together your financial aid package, really be able to think thoughtfully about your individual circumstances. So you'll have to submit to us 2 financial aid applications, and through those, we'll get a lot of detail about your financial situation. And we'll be able to take into account those kinds of special circumstances that might arise. So things like household size, but also things like maybe there are medical costs you have that are causing additional financial burden for you. Maybe there's an older family member that you're having to care for as well. So those other kinds of things that may be a part of your kind of financial story, we are able to take those into account and be able to kind of help those inform us when we create your financial aid package, so that again, we can continue to move toward that goal as successfully as possible in offering you a comprehensive package. And then on the back end as well, once you get your financial aid package, we're able to talk through it with you if you have questions or don't understand pieces. If there's an error you think, or if something pops up, an unexpected cost that changes your financial circumstances, we can have those kinds of conversations with you as well to make sure that at the end of the day, we're giving you the kind of support that you need. And for us, it's really a matter of believing that we want to invest in you as much as we can so that you can come to our campuses and be fully engaged in the community and really truly take advantage of everything that we have to offer. So with that in mind, I'll hand it over to my colleague to talk about the review process.
Thank you, Alex. Now that you've all heard a bit about our educational philosophy and about our generous financial aid policies, you probably want to know about the admissions review process. One of you have already asked a question about that, and you want to know your chances of admission, right? I can't give you an easy answer about the likelihood of admission because we do not base our admissions decisions solely on GPAs. We have admitted students with somewhat softer GPAs, and we have denied students with perfect grades. I mean, I understand that this makes our admissions process seem more mysterious because we cannot provide you with an algorithm or formula, but I can talk to you about what we look for in a whole person review process. Certainly, an applicant's potential to thrive academically at our colleges is a paramount consideration. And there are many ways for us to determine how a student might perform academically on our campuses. The transcript, for one, gives us a history of the courses that you have taken and how well you've done in them. The longer a student has been out of high school, the less emphasis the admissions committee will place on the high school record. We've admitted students with high school GPAs of below 1.0. One of them did not go to college right away, right after high school, but when he did resume his education, his academic transition was still quite rocky. But he showed a strong upward trajectory in his academic performance. He ended up receiving A's in his most recent classes. We do expect applicants to present strong recent academic credentials with grades mostly in the A range, preferably in liberal arts and science courses. While transcripts provide us helpful quantitative information on how students have performed academically, letters of recommendation are another way for us to see how a student would add to the classroom. While not all references need to be academic ones, recommendations from your instructors give us an idea of your learning style, your intellectual depth, contributions to the classroom, and how you engaged your peers and faculty members. Some of us have been test optional for transfer students for a long time now, and we do not require either the SAT or ACT. Others of us normally do require testing as part of our admissions process. But we are more flexible about this requirement this year, given the limited testing availability as a result of the COVID pandemic. So all 5 of our institutions are test optional this year, and that means that SATs and ACTs are not required. The admissions committee will also pay close attention to the essays because they provide us with information about a student's writing ability, the depth of their academic interests, and how thoughtful they are. Beyond looking at academic potential, we're also trying to determine how an applicant will contribute to our campus community. We don't want students who are just going to come to our schools, study, close their door, and not engage with us. And so your resume or list of non-academic engagements help us understand how you might take advantage of our college resources and how you would engage others on campus. As you've already heard from my colleagues tonight, we really actively seek out veterans because you bring valued perspectives to our campuses. The essays may shed light on your military experience, on your background, your sense of otherness, about what you're thinking about, what is important to you. If you're working through service to school, the VetLink addendum can also provide valuable information about your military experience. Some of us may offer interviews, and this is another way for us to learn more about you and the perspectives you would bring to our schools. So from all of the admissions materials I mentioned, we can get an idea of how you may have positively impacted your classrooms or your colleges or the military, your families, workplace, or local communities. And this in turn can help us better understand how you might make our colleges better and how you would do academically at our institutions. It may be helpful for me to give you a concrete example of one of our alums who graduated from high school where he got mostly B's and C's. He was an intelligent young man, but maybe a little immature in high school and wasn't focused on academics. He joined the military right after high school and served as an Army Ranger. He got married along the way and started college after his 5-year stint in the Army. He attended the Warrior Scholar Project the summer before taking classes at his local college. He did much better academically in college because he was more mature by then and had developed a genuine appreciation for education. His college grades were all A's, and he received warm recommendations from his college instructors. From his essays and interview, the admissions committee got a sense that he would contribute greatly to campus discussions. He transferred to Yale's Eli Whitney Students Program. He and his wife moved to New Haven. He majored in history and was particularly interested in exploring American volunteers in foreign civil wars. He now works in finance in New York City. This is not to suggest that we admit only people with softer high school records or only people from the special forces, but I use this example simply to illustrate our whole person review process. I've provided you with a couple of examples of, one's of a Yale student and one's of a Yale graduate, but I think both of my examples pertain to the other colleges here too. Though our admissions process is very competitive and there's no guarantee of admission, I would encourage you to apply if you have a strong recent academic record, you want to pursue a liberal arts education, and want to actively engage a campus community. I also want to touch briefly on transfer credits because some of you have already taken college classes. I know that some of you may end up applying as first-year students and others of you may be applying as transfers. Students are eligible to apply as transfer students if they will have at least 1 year's worth of transferable credits, so that they're entering our colleges as sophomores or juniors. Because our applicants apply to transfer from colleges from across the country and from all over the world, we don't have a list of pre-approved classes that are transferable. So usually, courses are transferable if they're similar to the classes offered at our institutions. This means that liberal arts and science courses are most likely to be transferable. So, these might be general education courses at your current school. Military classes are not transferable because we don't offer those at our colleges. While the admissions committee will take into consideration performance in online classes when evaluating applications, courses taken online are usually not transferable. Now, this doesn't mean that you should not take the online classes. If online classes are the only way for you to take classes, by all means take them, because they will prepare you for the rigorous classes at our colleges. But please note that given the impact of COVID-19, some of us may be more flexible about online classes this year. This is especially true for spring 2020 classes that began in person, but ended up being virtual because of the pandemic. Though not all credits are transferable, please, please, please don't despair. Many of our students appreciate the ability to spend more time on our campuses, especially since financial aid is so generous. Each of our colleges have slightly different credit transfer policies, so don't be shy about reaching out to us to ask institution-specific questions. My colleague, Alex from Princeton, will now provide you with some tips that will be helpful to you as you prepare to submit college applications.
Thanks, Patricia. So at this point, you've gotten some information about that might make these institutions appealing somehow in terms of the liberal arts college processes that we offer, as well as financial aid and kind of what the admission process looks like. So next, you might be thinking, okay, what's the next step? How do I get from here where I am now to the application process and to admission? So these tips are listed generally broadly in kind of chronological order as you approach that process. And this can vary depending on where you are. I know a number of you joining us tonight and watching are active duty or National Guard. A number of you have already separated and so forth. So, and also to what extent you've done some of these obviously will, vary in terms of how this applies to you. But this is just a general place to get started and find yourself somewhere along this timeline. But I do just want to stress, in all of these considerations and all these tips that we're offering, just really reiterating the concept of aiming high. I mean, have faith in yourself that you are capable in these institutions, whether it's the 5 of us tonight, whether it's other institutions you might be looking at, and apply to a range. As it was said, there are no guarantees for admission because we are highly selective, but this, I think, should help you approach this process to present the best possible opportunity for yourself in terms of the admission processes that you're looking towards and different colleges. So first of all, I mean, we've stressed this already, but connect with some kind of nonprofit support. The partners that we have listed here tonight are some of the strongest that we've worked with. There are others available, but Service to School, Leadership Scholar Program are great resources for you to help you navigate this process and give you advice on the application process from the perspective of someone who has applied as a veteran themselves in these programs. We're giving you advice generally about how our operations work, but we haven't been in the same shoes individually, personally, as you have. But the individuals working at Service to School and Leadership Scholar have, and they're great resources to work with you on that process. But whatever organization you look for, these are the most highly recommended. They are closely connected with us. But I will just stress the nonprofit piece here as well. There are a lot of other organizations that offer support. Many of them charge for that, especially if if you see them calling themselves or calling their customers clients or whatever. That's usually a pretty good indication that this is something that you would have to pay for. And there's really no need for it in general. I mean, because these are great opportunities through Service to School and Leadership Scholar that, and also Warrior Scholar, which I'll mention in a minute, which are available to you free of charge as the student. So I just want to plug those here as well. And then in terms of establishing this recent academic trend that Patricia was talking about, if you were a terrible high school student, you were a terrible student at college the first time around, we have those students on our campus on all cases because these students were able to establish recent academic work. So think about what options are available to you in your transition, either options that are available now or options that you can sign up for next month or next semester or whenever in terms of when you separate. This can vary widely based on what is possible in terms of what's available in your individual context and also what's possible within, if you are still active duty or whatever your other responsibilities are, if you're separated, how much time you have. Not all of you could be full-time students or earn your associate's degree, for example, before you even separate. It really depends on what you can do, but you're not at a disadvantage necessarily, if you don't have that opportunity to take those courses already or if you've already done them. You just have to think about your approach in doing that. So in terms of those academic options, first and foremost, the ones that are going to be most similar to what we offer and therefore best representative of your ability to transition are those at accredited universities or maybe local community colleges. Ideally in-seat in a normal year. This is anything but a normal year. As Patricia said, a lot of these courses are being offered online, but those in-seat courses and courses that are offered specifically similar to the kind of courses that we offer, as well as those that you're in, related to what you want to study, those are a good first option because not only are they showing your ability to succeed in courses that are similar to ours, but if they're in-seat or similar to what we're offering, they may be eligible for transferable credit as well if you happen to apply as a transfer student. If that's not available, think about online courses, ideally accredited online universities as well. Those will give you at least, if not transferable credit, at least a little bit more background in terms of building up the coursework in terms of your transition. If you could do it now, maybe one course or 2 courses per semester, great. If not, think about doing it, at a later time in your service or maybe after you separate. Because I think this will give you, again, a little bit more of a transition. And even if you're not thinking of transferring, well, don't think these courses aren't worth it because I'm not going to transfer. I'm applying as a first-year student anyway. Still taking those courses will help you in the admission process in terms of us understanding your recent capability, even if they're not transferable courses or you're not looking to transfer. In place of that, or I would say in addition, look at military-specific academic workshops. The Warrior Scholar Project is a great example of that, and one of our partners of all of us tonight. And so is the Stanford 2 to 4 Veteran Accelerator, provided primarily for veterans looking for the 2 to 4, 2-year college to 4-year college transfer in general, a more extended program. Warrior Scholar works at no cost to this individual student, and it's not a full course. It's kind of more of a crash course, you could call it, an academic workshop for 1 or 2 weeks, but has you doing work with faculty on our campuses or virtually, depending on the year, and showing, I think, that you have the ability to participate in that rigor and work with those faculty. I think a lot of our students speak very highly of it. We speak very highly of it, and our faculty speak very highly of the students because even, again, it's an example of something that's not necessarily a credit course, but having done the program shows us that you've done another piece in the transition, the academic transition, as you move towards the application process. Another thing to keep in mind is timing your projected enrollment term with your separation if you're currently active, or if you're a veteran with a time that would allow you to be a full-time student. There are programs you can do online, fully online, to get your bachelor's while still active duty and have a more flexible schedule. Our programs are more intended for full-time students, and it's very difficult, if not impossible, to have a full-time job, be it active duty, military, or otherwise, and also be a full-time student living on our campus or in close proximity of our campus and being fully immersed in that as a college student, because that's part of what our liberal arts residential college programs exist for. So you definitely want to plan at a time. You can definitely apply while you're still active duty. But for example, if you're looking to apply for the fall 2021 semester, you want to think about, will you be separating sometime, now between August of 2021, for example. So again, you can, when by the time you are admitted, would be enrolling, I should say, you'll be able to separate and do that full time. But then the next thing to do is determine what your admission program might be. Again, this is dependent on the credits you've done, how much college work you've done. If it's minimal and it's not enough to equate to a full year, semester, or however the transfer program works, you can consider working as a first-year student. Although, again, keeping in mind that doesn't mean you shouldn't take college courses or whatever opportunities you can to build up to that, but you might be a first-year student, or if you have enough and you might consider transferring, and you want those credits transferred, you could be a transfer student and start after higher than first year. Or it might be an optional, a third option, or other options. The Eli Whitney program, which Patricia spoke about earlier and we'll speak about in a bit, is a good example of that. Some colleges only have 1 or 2 first year versus transfer, and some have the other option. So it's a good thing to talk about with the regional, the admission officer like ourselves, our counterparts at these institutions that can guide you on that. When it comes to the application, thinking about the application, already got a lot of good advice about how to talk about yourself in the essays and how to have others support you. But I think for any non-traditional student, especially including veterans for sure, have a way to explain your trajectory or as well as any unusual circumstances. This would mean, a resume or CV is a very good way to kind of map this out, provide a roadmap of this is when you graduated high school, this is when you enlisted, for example, this is when you started college or have been going to college for these years. It's just easier for us to get a sense of what you've done and understand that trajectory, the good things and maybe some bad things along the way that didn't go as you planned. Again, that's not going to preclude you from admission. It just helps us understand what happened and maybe what you've learned from it. And if you need more time to explain it, use those additional information sections on the application. They exist everywhere. And if they don't exist, send an email or something and say, hey, I want to explain these circumstances. This could be anything from challenges you had along the way or things that helped or inhibited your progression. And I would say especially things that may have impacted your academic trajectory as well. Common examples of this are grades that weren't as high as you would have hoped because you had certain financial issues or other challenges, health challenges, family challenges, or whatever. Or withdrawal courses is another example. If it shows up as a withdrawal on your transcript, that may or may not be a bad thing. We don't necessarily know whether the student withdrew because they were lazy or there was a compelling reason. More often than not, it's obviously the compelling reason, a deployment or whatever reason. But just let us know about that, and that helps us understand. This is a student who, under normal circumstances where they wouldn't have to withdraw, where they wouldn't have all these responsibilities, would still be able to achieve highly, and that helps us to contextualize your performance. Makes the B or the C or the withdrawal look a lot better than with that context understanding than it would otherwise. And the final thing I'll add here is just to consider other possible recommendations. Patricia talked a lot about what will generally require as far as academic recommendations, academic instructor recommendations. But think about, again, as a non-traditional student who has maybe either been out of school for a while or been doing things in addition to school, what other references can you provide from people who have worked with you? A very common example of this is if you're active duty or recently separated, supervisors or people you worked with in the military. This doesn't have to be your CO. We don't care about rank necessarily, especially if that person may or may not be supportive of your what you're thinking of doing in terms of education or whatever. But people who know you and support you and have worked with you to speak to your integrity, your character, your leadership, maybe your intellectual potential as well. That helps us get a sense of not just what kind of student you are, your teachers will speak to that, but also what kind of characteristics you bring outside of that. Mentors and advisors you've been working with, whether it's at the base education center or whether it's at your local college if you're enrolled in college, or maybe just an employer that's separate from the military or college that can speak to you. Those optional references, I highly recommend using them just because, again, you have more life experience to talk about than the average traditional student. So talk about it on the application and let us know the perspectives of folks who've worked with you. I can support that as well. So a lot of information here, and I've seen some more questions coming in the Q&A box. Really excited about that. We're we're answering those as we go and typing, and we'll also make sure to answer them when we get to the Q&A section as well. But before we do that, I'm going to switch gears a little bit and switch from the common information to just give a couple of just quick notes about each of our individual institutions to help you get to know them a little bit better. And we'll start from the top, alphabetically rather, with Amherst College, and I'll pass it over to Lexi.
Awesome. Thank you, Alex. That information that you gave is fabulous. So I really appreciate you outlining that for everyone. So I want to take a few minutes and tell you a little bit about Amherst College specifically. Amherst is a small residential liberal arts college. We have about 1,850 students, and we are located in a town called Surprise, Amherst, Mass. We're about an hour and a half west of Boston, about 3 hours north of New York City, so in the western part of the state. And we're an undergraduate institution only, so we do not have any graduate programs on our campus, although 80% of our students do go on to graduate school with very high rates to medical school and law school and things like that as well. So 71 student to faculty ratio, 80% of our classes have fewer than 30 students, just to contextualize a little bit. Two things that I really want to hammer home that are a little bit unique about Amherst is that we have something called an open curriculum. So although we do require full-time enrollment of all of our students, we have no general education requirements, nor do we have any distribution requirements. And so it really is an ultimate freedom and flexibility with how you want to take your educational journey and customize it to your interests, to leave space to explore, to evolve throughout your time while you're students with us. And it makes it very, very flexible, especially specifically for transfer students. And although not all of our military affiliated students apply as transfer students, the majority end up joining us as transfer students. So About 45% of our students double major. About 45% of our students also study abroad. Some of that flexibility is due to the open curriculum. I'd love to talk to you more about that, but it's one of the main things that many of our students do really talk about as being a fundamental to their experience at Amherst. The other thing that I'll mention is that we are a member of something called the 5 College Consortium. And so right in our area, there's not just Amherst College, but there are 4 other institutions, Smith College, Mount Holyoke College, Hampshire College, and then the University of Massachusetts at Amherst, which is the flagship university for the public education system, higher education system in Massachusetts. So although we have 1,850 students, there's about 30,000 undergraduate students that are right in our area. And once you're a student at Amherst College, you can take classes at any of the other institutions completely free of charge. All of the campuses and the registrars have organized everything. Our faculty all work very closely with one another across these different campuses. So it doesn't cost you anything. There's a free public transportation system, a free city bus system that gets you everywhere you need to go, especially if you're living off campus as well. It goes into the residential areas. And you can also engage with those campuses for anything that's beyond the classroom. So lecture series, different student clubs and organizations. So we have about 16 student veterans on our campus, but there are about 450 student veterans that in our larger area. So it does provide some of the appeal of going to a much larger institution with some of the closeness of being at a small place. Some quick facts specifically about our transfer programs and our military affiliated student programs. For transfer, I will say that we do have a spring entry program and a fall entry program. I think we're the only institution here that does have a spring entry program. And you are also welcome to apply as a first-year student. I did put up our average financial aid package for our transfer students this year at $69,000 in scholarship money. We are a no-loan institution, so when we do award students financial aid, we do not ask them to take out any undergraduate debt toward that. And although students can use their GI Bill benefits, as Alex was saying earlier, the vast majority of our transfers, of our military affiliated students do not do that. They utilize our own institutional financial aid. So I just thought I'd put that number up there. If you do use your Yellow Ribbon benefits, they're uncapped and they're unlimited. So we have endless spaces and your tuition will be 100% covered. I have some resources right there about some of the specific support that we do have on our campus for military affiliated students. I'll also say that we do have transfer and veteran specific student housing and a very specific transfer veteran student seminar. And I'll just encourage you, today we're gonna give you a lot of information, but please, you'll hear us say this, please do reach out to us individually. Each one of us, I know for a fact, has individual student conversations all the time so that we can best help you figure out if we are an institution, any of us, that you'd like to explore, that we can best set you up to be successful and as competitive as possible in our application rounds. So with that, I will hand it off.
All right, hello, how are you? I think that one of the things that's so important is that you get to hear from each of us. So I'm really glad that we were able to speak to you tonight. I think when we're thinking about Pomona, it's really important to place us. We're 35 miles east of downtown Los Angeles in the town of Claremont, California. We are a liberal arts and sciences institution. We've heard a lot about that today. We are part of the Claremont colleges. So we have 1,650 students on our campus, but there's 6,000 total undergraduate students in Claremont. There are 5 schools. In addition to Pomona, there's Claremont McKenna, Harvey Mudd, Scripps College, as well as Pitzer College, which together with Pomona form the Claremont colleges. The concept of Claremont is very simple. You live at one school, but you take classes at all 5. You're a student at one school, but you can participate in extracurricular activities at all 5. 250 clubs and organizations, 6,000 students, about 2,700 courses offered every year. Really feels much bigger than a standard 1,650 student large liberal arts college. One of the things that is really important at Pomona when we are thinking about the idea of education, we do believe in marrying research with in-class learning. And our faculty are always so excited to be able to pair their research projects and student research projects with other faculty collaborations across Claremont. Our faculty are engaged deeply with their students, as we've already talked about today, as all of us are. And I think it's just worth pointing out a few different pieces of the military-connected students at Pomona. Really important to note how much our faculty love working with them. One of the things that's totally important is that we have a real community, both at Pomona and in Claremont. We have some money from the Amundsen Foundation, which really helps support our students with financial aid and research support, which we've talked about today. We do guarantee on-campus housing, but many of our veterans do choose to live off campus if they have a partner or family. Many of our students who live on campus tend to be single. You have a choice to do either. And then when it comes to support and to some of the students who are doing work on campus, we have all branches represented on campus, and they're doing very different things. And so I'll just kind of leave you with a couple of examples of some veterans that have come through the last few years that really have flourished. We have one of our veterans who came in undecided and then decided to major in economics and is pursuing an internship this summer. We have another student who came in knowing that she was going to major in psychology, and she's now working on psych projects in relationship to psychology and climate change. Another who came in as a computer scientist and is absolutely planning to go to medical school. So many different majors and support services available for students to have that rich and deep experience. So with that, I will pass it off to Alex Princeton.
Thanks, Adam. So to give you a few points about Princeton. First of all, I do have my contact information there in big letters there, as we all do. Again, I just want to stress the fact that if you're interested in this and you haven't already talked to me, I know I've spoken to some of you who have registered tonight, which is great. But just get in touch, and I think we'd all agree with this. I mean, I'm happy to speak to you, and whether it's by phone or set up a video meeting, a Zoom or whatever. I'd love to talk to you if you're interested in learning more about Princeton. So some quick facts for you, where we're located. We're in Princeton, New Jersey. We're right in the middle of a very diverse state. So Princeton itself is kind of a small town, suburban town, college town kind of feel. And it gives you a sense, a good balance between having your immediate setting being a very, again, small, safe suburban area, but having great proximity to New York City, Philadelphia, major cities where there's a lot of things to do, internships, just recreational things as well. About an hour each way will get you to one or the other. There's a train that comes right on the campus, so students get up there by train all the time. Princeton combines being both a major research university with some of the top academic resources and faculty in the world, but also a small liberal arts college with very strong programs in not just the liberal arts areas, but also sciences and engineering. Again, combining a pretty unique balance between having the resources of major research universities, but being so lopsidedly balanced towards undergraduates, more so than almost any other major university you'll see. We have almost twice as many undergraduates, 5,300 undergraduates compared to under 3,000 graduate students. Again, very rare for a major research university, but research is something that all of our students do. In addition to the liberal arts areas, whatever you like to do, whatever you're interested in, every single student, whether you're majoring in economics or the humanities and the arts, engineering and sciences, every student gets the opportunity to conduct independent research. It's a guaranteed opportunity because it's a requirement at Princeton. And we also guarantee housing opportunities for all undergraduates as well. And that does include non-traditional students and family housing as well. So some students will come in, even if they're older students, and say, hey, I want to be a college student. I'm here by myself. I want to live in a dorm. And you can definitely get that single room as well in the dorm. But if you're coming with family, spouses, dependents, pets, or whatever, we have housing, apartment-style housing on campus. That's appropriate for that too. And we guarantee that for all years as well. So as long as you're a student with us, whether you're starting as your first year or transferring midstream, that's guaranteed to you. As far as the military community, all of our military candidates basically have the opportunity of applying as transfers or first years. There's no third option. Basically, it depends on how much college credit you have. Again, this is a very individualistic determination, so I would guarantee that I will be available to answer your questions on that. Just get in touch with me if you're not sure one way or the other, and I'll let you know, because it can vary depending on what your goals are, what you've done, and what's transferable and so forth. We offer automatic application fee waivers. You don't have to pay the fee. Just hit the Princeton-specific fee waiver button. And also, we do not require use of benefits. We have one of the strongest financial aid programs available, which is what Alex was talking about earlier. The full Princeton grant can cover your cost of attendance without using your benefits. The transfer program in general is not limited to just military students. Like I said, you can apply as a first-year student, but that transfer program was created a few years ago, or reinstated, I should say, specifically with U.S. military candidates in mind. So they are the majority of students that we admit in the transfer program by far. But we also have, like I said, some students coming in through the first year program. We've just over 20 veterans in the undergraduate population. It's a small but growing network. I said over 20 because the actual number is 24, but we do have some students taking leaves and so forth. So that number does vary, but again, it's a small but growing population, and one we're looking to continue to grow as well. And they're all supported not just by me on the admission side through, as I said, as Director of Transfer and Military Veteran Admission, but also by a separate Director of Transfer Veteran and Non-Traditional Student Programs. I apologize for the formatting here as well, but that should be Non-Traditional Student Programs here at the end. Keith Shaw is basically your advisor for all things academic, non-academic. He knows all the students by name, by interest, just as well as I do once they get to campus. The link for our veteran admissions site got cut off a bit there, but I'll drop it in the chat box as soon as I sign off here. But again, I would love to talk to you about how the strength of our undergraduate program. Again, even without having those major professional schools, we do see students getting involved in those professional schools, the top professional schools, whether it's medical, law school, business, after graduation, and much higher than the national average. For example, about 85 to 90% admission into medical schools after graduation from Princeton, even though we don't have a medical school, because that's just how strong the undergraduate program is. I'm going to drop some stats in the chat box as well as soon as I sign off about that. So again, would love to talk to you and get some more information if I haven't already. And even if I have, reach out again. No more questions are going to come up down the road as you explore Princeton if you're thinking about it. So please get in touch. And so now I'm going to pass it back to Alex Diodezio to speak about Williams.
Thanks, Alex. So next I'm talking about Williams College, which is another small liberal arts college located in Western Massachusetts. We have 2,200 students on our campus, and undergraduate students only. Really giving you a tight-knit space among those fellow undergraduate students and with your professors and with the staff members on campus. Just a huge part of the Williams experience is that kind of very close community and those kinds of one-on-one interactions or small group interactions that just happen in so many different ways, both formally and kind of just casually in more organic ways. Our curriculum is also one that really allows for a lot of freedom and exploration. This is a big part of our identity as a liberal arts college, but we really believe in the importance of students being able to take classes in all of the things that they are most interested in. So it's really easy to take classes in lots of different departments, to be able to double major. 40% of students double major at Williams, so it's very common, very manageable, and even with that, you can still take classes in other areas as well. So definitely a big part of our the academic experience at Williams is being able to really be a well-rounded student in whatever way that looks for you individually based on your own interests. We also have a really unique feature of our academics, which is called the tutorial class. And this is a type of class that we offer during the regular semester. We have other types as well, but this is a class with 2 students and 1 professor. So pretty much as small as you can get as far as classes go. It's a totally different structure to the typical class as well. It's basically based on an academic exchange model where students are creating independent work one week and then giving their partner feedback on their independent work the next week. So really regularly engaging in kind of criticism and dialogue and really listening to one another's ideas and being able to build off of that. So it's a really collaborative, really supportive kind of classroom structure that really allows you to grow tremendously as a student. And that's really what you hear from students who take advantage of them. They're offered in all of our 64 different areas of study and throughout your time at Williams, so always available to you as a student. I mentioned already that we have this really tight-knit community, but the tutorial is kind of an example of that. And our classes in general are going to be small. The average class size is 13 students. But again, in the classroom, in those more formal structures, and also kind of at large in the community, you'll just find you really have that sense of warmth and welcoming very regularly. It's common for professors to invite you out to coffee or to invite you over to their home for dinner. Those kinds of things are just a really normal part of being a Williams student. We also offer really wide access to support and resources on campus, really recognizing that folks need help sometimes, and we want to make sure that it's available for you when you do. So I mean that in terms of academic resources with things like free tutoring and a writing center and professors who are always having an open door policy to be an extra support to you, but also in terms of socio-emotional resources. As an example, we offer free therapy to all students. And I also mean that in terms of financial resources. We've talked a lot about financial aid, and that's certainly true at Williams. We have very generous aid, but also in terms of those things that pop up along the way as a student. Maybe there's a research conference you want to go present at that you need funding to get there. That's the kind of thing that the college can provide for you, and we've had veteran students do exactly that. So making sure that you're really supported on all different levels. For our transfer and veteran community specifically, we have 22 transfer and veteran students on campus. And for them specifically as a population too, those support and resources come up, again, in a really individualized way. That's true in our housing process, just as an example of that. So when students come get admitted to Williams, we'll have the conversation about what housing might work best for them. Most of our transfer students live on campus, but we do have a good subset of transfer students that are also living off campus. If off campus ends up being the right option for you, we do still provide campus-owned off-campus housing. So you won't have to do your own housing search. We'll provide it for you. It's a 2-minute walk to campus, so you still feel very much a part of the community. That's true with transfer credit as well. There's that same level of flexibility and individualization. Basically, as we review your credit and see how much transferable credit you also have the opportunity to relinquish some of that credit. So to say, well, even though I could have 2 years of transferable credit, I actually only want to take 1 year, or I actually want to start all over and spend 4 years at Williams. You have that option, whatever you'd like to choose to do. And we will still offer the same amount of financial aid for the whole time that you are at Williams. So while some of our transfer students come in thinking there's no way that they're going to do that or take advantage of it, actually the majority of our transfer students and our veteran students do ultimately take advantage because they often just want to end up spending more time at Williams. And so it's a very common thing for students to do. And I'll mention that our veteran students, like others, also apply as transfer students and as first-year students. So I'm always happy to have that conversation about what's best for you. Finally, I'll just mention that we have a Dean of Transfer and Veteran students on campus as well to make sure you have kind of a point person to go to with the questions you'll have. You'll inevitably end up with many mentors and advisors at Williams, but we want to make sure that from the get-go, you have somebody to turn to when questions come up. And we do have an upcoming event that I'll just highlight really briefly, which is our Transfer and Veteran Virtual Open House taking place on Friday, October 30th. Our schedule is up on the website, registration is live, so I encourage you to sign up if you're curious to learn more about Williams. And as my colleagues have said, please don't hesitate to reach out to me as well by email or to set up an appointment with me to talk on the phone or anything like that. Always happy to hear from students. And with that, I'll pass it over to my colleague, Patricia.
Thank you, Alex. Well, Yale is located right in downtown New Haven, Connecticut, a small city with a population of about 130,000. We're conveniently located between New York City and Boston along the Interstate 95 corridor. I like to say that New Haven is large enough to be interesting, yet small enough to be friendly. There are over 100 restaurants within walking distance of the New Haven Green. And New Haven has the second largest collection of free public art of any city in the United States. Most people don't know that. Yale students do not need to own a car if they live near campus in New Haven. Most everything you need is within walking distance. And there are also free Yale shuttle buses that take you to different parts of the campus and even to the VA hospital. Yale is the largest university among this group of 5 colleges. Like Princeton, we're both a research university and a liberal arts college. Our 6,000 undergraduates can take advantage of many of the resources of our 13 graduate and professional schools. For example, Akhil Amar is a renowned constitutional law expert, and he teaches at the Yale Law School, but he also teaches an undergraduate constitutional law class every year. Professor Sandy Chang is a Yale Medical School professor, but he teaches a class on cancer for first-year students every year. Many of our undergraduates do research in some of our 1,200 laboratories. While we are a major research university, Yale College is a liberal arts college, and we place special emphasis on undergraduate learning. The student-to-faculty ratio is only 6:1. 3/4 of our classes have 20 students or fewer in them. We have multi-tiered advising. A vast majority of our students do some type of research during their tenure at Yale. And the students can even sign up for their own personal librarian. There are 3 pathways to apply to Yale. The first year and transfer program, and that's self-explanatory. The Eli Whitney Students Program is a more flexible program designed specifically for adult students wishing to pursue a traditional Yale undergraduate education. Eli Whitney students receive the same bachelor's degrees as other Yale undergraduates and have access to the same classes, majors, facilities, research opportunities, and abroad experiences. But they have the option to take classes on a full or part-time basis. They live off campus, and financial aid is somewhat different. Veterans are welcome to apply to any of these 3 programs, first year transfer or Eli Whitney, depending on eligibility, but most do tend to apply to the Eli Whitney Students Program. We currently have 16 veterans and 1 active duty Marine. They range in age from mid-20s to early 50s and represent a range of former military occupations: hospital corpsman, infantryman, sergeant in the Signal Corps, information systems technician, Navy SEAL. Admissions information for active duty service members and veterans can be found at admissions.yale.edu/veterans. You see that on the slide here. I'm sure that you all have questions for us, so I will now turn the presentation over to Alex Buston from Princeton, who will moderate the Q&A.
Thank you, Patricia, and I'll invite all of my colleagues back onto the stage or the virtual stage here as we proceed to the Q&A. We've already said this in terms of using the Q&A tool, so please continue to send those live, and we'll either type the answers or answer them live here as well. We threw our contact information up here again, so you have it all in one place in case you didn't get a chance to write it down as well. And then one last thing just to mention about the last link in terms of registration. We imagine most of you did already register for this program by virtue of that's how you're getting here. But if you got the link from someone else and you didn't get a chance to register, we do ask that you go ahead and do that as well. That'll put you in our system, in our database, and we can send you more information, including the possible recording of this session, as we mentioned earlier. There's the URL. I'm going to throw it into the chat box as well. And also feel free to pass it on to folks who, this information on to folks who are maybe not able to attend tonight. So also I want to get us started, as even though those questions have been coming in, a lot of you submitted questions in advance with your registration that you'd like addressed. So thank you for doing that. And we're going to go ahead and start with some of those questions. So I think we talked about the general things about how to approach the application, but more specifically, I'm going to ask Alex D to take on this as in terms of the performance of the military and an individual's performance in the military, either currently or in the past, how should that translate into the application, and how is it viewed, and how should an applicant convey that in the application process?
Yeah, so there are a few ways to convey it in the application process, and I'll touch on those. But I'll just start by saying that it is highly valued in our application and our admission process, and I hope that's been conveyed already through tonight, but I'll just reiterate it to say that is absolutely a part of why we're excited by the military affiliated population is for your military experience and for all of the skills that you've gained through that are absolutely transferable to our community at large and to the academic realm as well, in terms of leadership, ability to collaborate, in terms of problem solving, and many things beyond that. So I'll just start by emphasizing that. But in how you can actually reflect that in the application, there are a few different ways to do it. You can do that through, kind of your experiences section, as is the language in the Common App, by just kind of giving us the information about your different kind of steps in the military. You can do that through the essays, where you can give more of a narrative sense of what that experience has meant to you, what you've gained from it, and how that might translate for you in your own personal reflections to this next step, going to potentially one of our institutions. You may or may not touch on it in the essay, though. That may be a place where you touch on it and you take some of these other opportunities I'll mention, or it can be that you use the essay for other things. So these are just options. I will also definitely emphasize the idea of using letters of recommendation really thoughtfully. All of us usually require at least one instructor letter of recommendation, maybe more, but we also are absolutely open to taking additional letters of recommendation. And I really encourage folks to make sure to include letters of recommendation from military commanders, from other folks that you worked alongside, whoever may be relevant for you in telling your military story. But definitely letters of recommendation are key in our review process and getting a sense of who you've been as part of the military throughout your career. And then there are these other places that might come up through some of your work with our partner organizations, things like the Service to School VetLink Addendum, which is kind of an additional document that gives a kind of sense of what your military career has been, and might also offer an additional essay or a kind of narrative opportunity to be able to reflect on that experience as well. But certainly make sure that you're including it, touching on it in at least one place, if not more, because we want you to know that we're excited about it and we're absolutely eager to hear about it in your application alongside the other things that you've done and have achieved.
Absolutely. I think that goes toward answering another question that popped up as you were speaking to that, Alex, about that Vetlic addendum specifically. How is it utilized? And just this candidate has heard that some schools don't even use it in the process. That may be true for some schools. I think I speak for all of us that we do use it. I personally cannot recall a service school applicant I've seen that I have not looked at the Vetlic addendum. I think it goes along everything you were saying, Alex, and that we are interested in hearing about it. And this is really not the only way we receive that information, but a very good way for us to get a handle on that. So want to pass it over to Lexi, because this came up a lot about just the SAT and ACT and how to approach it this year when it's optional, and then also for future years. What's your advice on that for those who are thinking about that?
Yeah, that's a great question, and one that we're getting quite a bit, because so many of our institutions have for so long required the SAT and ACT. But for fall 2021, many of us are test optional. So I'll just quickly give a definition of what test optional means in case you're not familiar. But typically when we say, oh, we're test optional, it's for the SAT or ACT specifically. And what that means is that we do not require the SAT or ACT for admission, but if you do choose to submit the SAT or ACT, we will evaluate it as part of your application component. So due to the pandemic, there is very limited availability to take the SAT and ACT currently. We know that even if it is available to you, there are some health and safety concerns that some people may have about even taking those exams. And so that's where a lot of us have moved into test optional policies. And some of us, as Patricia mentioned earlier, have had some test optional policies as well. So I do want to emphasize that test optional does mean test optional. It's not sort of like a wink, wink. We're saying it's optional, but like if you don't have it, you're going to be at a disadvantage. We all have systems developed this year, in particular, where we know that the rest of the application materials that we do require are going to give us enough information through which we can make a decision on a file. So do not feel like you need to, risk your life to kind of go out there if that's not something that is available to take the SAT or ACT. Some of you may have an SAT or ACT score already. I think last time we got together, none of us have expirations on the SAT or ACT. Maybe we do, it might be worth reaching out. But it looks like everyone will accept any date of an SAT or ACT that you may have taken. And you might be wondering, should I submit it, should I not submit it? That will be a very individualized decision, of course. That's where, a partner like Service to School, who does mentoring through the application process, can really help you think about whether or not that would be advantageous for you to submit that for us. You can also, we do have some information about various scores on our websites and things like that that you could check as well. But that's a little bit about SAT or ACT. I don't know if anybody else wanted to jump in with that, or if I've got it covered.
I think that was a great summary. If anyone else is unclear in the audience, please definitely let us know and submit something in the chat. But want to go to something that was just submitted, and I think it's something that we've seen a little bit, going back a little bit to the military experience, less from the student's perspective, but in terms of the recommendations we were talking about. Adam, for that military recommendation, should students suggest that they write about what they've done for one unit, and how are they able to manage school and military work? Should it be more comprehensive as an overview? Like what's the approach there for that recommendation?
There we go. Now you can hear me. Yeah, it's a good question. And I'll reference what Patricia talked about earlier when she talked about the priority given to academic recommendations. And so the first thing I would say is we do need those academic recommendations. The CO recommendation or any of your other recommendations from either a peer or some other kind of a commander can be a really critical story to tell, and we really want to hear that story. I think one of the things that's important to understand is that the perspective of the writer really is important. So if you have someone who have known for a little bit longer, that can be helpful because they can talk about your trajectory. They can talk about the sort of history of the experience, perhaps. Maybe you started at one rank and you ended up at another rank, how you move through can be helpful. And also perhaps experiences. Maybe there was a tough situation that you exhibited real leadership skills in. Maybe you've done 2 deployments and you were in a combat zone and they can talk about that. The experience really is going to be shaped by that relationship that you have with the commanding officer or whoever the superior is that's writing the recommendation. But we absolutely like to hear those stories and are more than willing to take those recommendations.
Absolutely, definitely helps to add that on our front as well. So, and again, I mentioned this generally, but it doesn't have to be just one. I don't think it's just got to be. I mean, if you have a second that can add also valuable information, you can definitely do that as well. Patricia, a question came up about registering for classes and how that works, specifically if there were a priority registration or anything like that. And I think maybe spinning that a little bit more in terms of how are students register for classes. And I think maybe, can you speak a little bit about just how this comes into play in terms of academic advising as students, so, would enroll in classes and pick classes at our institutions?
Sure. I think we're probably similar, I suspect, at our institutions, that we probably generally don't have priority registration for different groups of students, right? Is that correct? So yes. And so we really work very hard individually with students. If you're not sure whether you should take a particular class, you talk to your advisors, there are placement tests. So it isn't sort of, I know sort of my daughter actually goes to school where the athletes get to register first. That does not happen at our institution. So everybody is at the same sort of level, but our students are also in constant contact with their advisors to try to figure out what the best way to go about choosing the right classes. So you're not doing this in a vacuum. And I think all of our institutions, we don't have sort of the problem where, oh, if you don't register in time, you won't be able to take the courses that are required for your major, or you won't be able to graduate in time. That doesn't happen at any of our 5 institutions.
Absolutely. I think really pinpointing a key difference between kind of how just this works at a very undergraduate student-centered institution, which you'll see at any liberal arts college, such as Williams and Amherst and Pomona, or any university like Yale or Princeton that treats its undergraduates like they were at a liberal arts college in those ways. So great question. Thank you for submitting that. Another one that just came up that I can take is specific to with regards to DLI or Defense Language Institute courses taken there. Would the associates from that institution be treated differently or versus transfer credits versus taken without an AA degree, for example? And I can take that because we have had students in all those scenarios, students with AAs from community colleges, AAs from DLI, and students without AAs. I think the completion of an AA is great because it does show again your ability to go through and complete it, but your ability is not always in your own control. So if there are things that precluded you from completing that degree, that's not going to have an impact on how we review your overall performance, but also it wouldn't necessarily have an impact on whether your courses are transferable. The real thing that our faculty and college deans are looking at in transferable credit is this of similar nature and rigor to the type of course that we would offer? And in DLI, again, the mechanics are different, but I think everyone would agree that an intense course in Arabic or Japanese at DLI can provide similar levels of flexibility. I'm sorry, not flexibility, rigor as we would offer as well. So again, it'd be kind of on a case-by-case basis, but I think these are, looking at the rigor of those courses is something we would definitely consider as well. So I want to shift a little bit to the outside of the academic side, and just more specifically to the support services that are offered for veterans and maybe for their families. Lexi, are you able to speak to that?
Yeah, I think that there's a wide range of different support services. Some of our institutions will have very veteran-specific support services, and we're very fortunate at each of our institutions that we're very well resourced. So, we have really great support services across for all of our different students. I know that some of us have off-campus housing and family housing options available. All of us have wonderful counseling centers where we have on-campus appointments for different therapy if you might need to do that, off-campus appointments as well, referring out if that's the direction to take, wonderful writing centers, quantitative skill centers, the opportunity to have tutors. I know that there's a lot of other veteran specific things too, so I'm happy to have someone else jump in on some of those. But we all, you know, if you're coming with a family, a spouse, children, dependents, and things like that, we're all very, very welcoming communities, and we welcome children in the dining halls, spouses in the gyms and the libraries and things like that as well. But if anybody else wants to jump in, please feel free.
Yeah, I would add for our families as well. They're connected. I mean, the students themselves are connected with their network of peer students at the undergraduate institution. But you know, there are students and also other members of our communities that also have spouses and dependents here as well, and they also have their own networks too. At Princeton, since we're the Princeton Tigers, our daycare network is called the Tigers with Cubs Network. So for students who and families who have dependents and so forth. So are there other avenues? And again, that is taken first and foremost into account, especially for some of the family-friendly housing that we have. Again, because we are very close-knit, cohesive communities. We want the student to be a part of that community, but their entire family as well. And I think that's something that you recognize in our community. So another thing that I want to pose to Patricia, kind of combining two advanced questions that we got here. One student asked about the age, if you're a much older non-traditional student, if there are limitations on that, and maybe combining that with another question of how inclusive are our student bodies to non-traditional and older students?
I think all of our colleges are very welcoming to non-traditional students. That said, you have to realize that the vast majority of our undergraduate students are in the age range between 18 and 22, and many of them have not taken any time off from their education since kindergarten. But the students really do welcome people with different backgrounds, people who have done different things, whether it's in the military or other professional backgrounds, and they're intrigued. They want to learn more about you. And we have had veterans who joined the fraternities at Yale, and there are other veterans who would never ever do that, right? So it's really sort of up to each individual student how much and in what ways they want to engage the undergraduate community. For those of you who have been out of school for a long time, 10, 20 years, I would actually encourage you to read a medium.com article that was written by Jimmy Hatch, who entered Yale as a first-year student when he was age 52, and he talked about his first semester at Yale as a veteran. And I think that's just sort of very helpful information, whether you're considering applying to Yale or some other schools. But we certainly are very supportive of that. And what was, of course, Alex, I can't remember what the first part of your question was.
I think it was the initial question was asked about an age limit. Is there a point at which a student is too old to attend? And I kind of folded into like the older non-traditional piece.
I don't think there are I don't think any of our colleges have any age limits whatsoever. And I guess, maybe Yale is a little bit unusual because we do have the Eli Whitney Students Program, but we have, a student in her 60s. So I always tell people that in many ways, college is actually wasted on the young, and that the older students really, they don't take it for granted, and they really grasp everything that we have to offer. So I would encourage you, if you've taken, whether it is 3 years off or 20 years off, to consider going to colleges like ours.
Absolutely. Again, just because there's a majority at a younger age, either traditional college age or shortly, early 20s or mid 20s, we absolutely do have those older students on our campus, and the accommodations and recognition is absolutely taken into account. So another question that came through that I want to pass to Alex D, just about for people who are working, full-time and going to school part-time, is there a certain amount of classes they should be taking? What should be the approach as far as like part-time versus full-time before they apply? Or what's more important generally, full-time, part-time, the types of grades they get in those courses? How should that be thought about in the process?
Yeah, absolutely. if you're working a full-time job and part-time is what you can manage alongside that full-time job, then that's absolutely fine. By no means is part-time enrollment held against a student within the application process. So I'll just start there and by emphasizing that. But yes, certainly the grades and the courses are ultimately the most important thing to us, and seeing strong performance in recent coursework is critical. But we also do like to see that there is some substantive work that has taken place. So for part-time enrollment or full-time enrollment, I say it's helpful for us to see at least a couple semesters worth of college enrollment where we're also seeing the grades for those semesters to be able to be reflected in the application process. So that's helpful. But I can imagine, I know it's true for Williams, and I'm sure it's true for my partners here, that we've all seen cases that go outside of that kind of rough suggestion as well. I know that we have certainly had veterans that have had fewer courses than that, maybe have applied with only one semester's worth and been admitted. Typically, those those students have applied through our first year process. So that's an important consideration to take into account as well, is how many courses do I have? And then from there, well, is that enough to go into the transfer process, or might I be better served by the first year process? And while we've given some general guidance about that question, I'll say that ultimately it's probably most helpful if you're feeling on the edge between those two options to really just reach out to the schools and to the folks here that you're interested in to get a little bit more information about what might be best for that individual institution. But all of that to say that if you are enrolled part-time, that's absolutely fine. It's helpful to see at least a couple semesters worth of part-time enrollment and to see the grades for those by the time that you do apply, to be able to have a good sense of your academic readiness. But certainly it doesn't hurt to try to apply if you have less than that, or if you're feeling like you're unsure about if you have sufficient amounts of college coursework, because of, the worst thing that can happen is that you don't get the result that you're hoping for, but maybe you do at another institution, or maybe you apply again the next year, and none of us hold it against a student to apply for a second time. But certainly we're understanding to the other kinds of circumstances that are going on in your life, such as full-time work. So we'll definitely be mindful of that.
Definitely. I think that's a great answer. I think that even goes to answering another question that came up about what that approach is, first year transfer or whatever. And as I said earlier, as you said, Alex, reach out to us, also, asking about these emails, please, write down the emails that we have here to get in touch with us, because we'll help you with that as well. And I know we're coming up on time here. We had one more great question that I want to pitch to Lexi that just came through. Broadly speaking, how have you seen veterans historically adapting to transferring from typical community college curriculum coursework to that at elite institutions such as the 5-year or similar peer institutions?
Yeah, and I was just typing out an answer to that in case we weren't able to get to it. And it is a fabulous question, because imposter syndrome is real. And I know many of you are thinking right now, like, this sounds like a great opportunity, but like, are these institutions really talking about someone like me? And the answer is yes. For almost all of the students that I've worked with, they've had to have a little bit of push, someone to help them think like, would I be able to adapt? Would I be able to be successful at these institutions? And normally it's honestly someone tapping you on the shoulder and say, hey, you should really think about applying to Princeton. You should really think about applying to Pomona or Williams. And that's what we hope that we're here today to do. And that's what we hope Warrior Scholar Project helps you do, in Leadership Scholar Program, in Service to School. But the veterans on our campuses do extraordinarily well. That is not to say that it's not without some difficult moments, some difficult conversations, but that's true of all of our students. We hope that that's the reason that you're pursuing an education at our different institutions as well, because it's not going to be easy all the time. But they're very, very successful. And everyone's, what they adapt to and what different issues or opportunities do come up depends on you and your own individual journey and what you're looking for. But it's a great question.
Absolutely. And thank you all again for attending and sticking with us this long and all the great questions that you're asking. This is really helpful for us and helpful for you, we hope, as well. So since we're past time, I want to just kind of pitch one more, just kind of close out question for the panel here as well. We've given a lot of information today and a lot of points that, again, we hope are helpful. So maybe just leave everybody, if we can just go down the line with one thing, one action item that any individual, depending where they are in the process, what's one action item they can do in the next week or month just to get this process rolling. We'll go. We'll start alphabetically, and I'll go last. Lexi.
So a quick thing, and I'll just kind of mention it before, our different partner programs, Warrior Scholar Project, Leadership Scholar Program, and Service to School. Reach out to them if you're not already on some of their list. It's a fabulous resource to kind of keep you motivated through the process.
All right, mine, when you're thinking about courses that you're taking now, or you're thinking about particularly those who are in community college, focus on that liberal arts core, the math, the science, the foreign language, the social studies, the English classes. Really do focus on those. Those are always the most transferable. They're always the most appealing for us as institutions when we're looking for students to admit. And in doing well in those will prepare you for doing well at our level.
My colleagues here have heard me say this many times, but mine is going to be to make sure to reach out to current veteran students on our campuses as well. They're always eager to talk to folks that are interested, and they provide really great advice, give you a sense of the individual campuses, the culture there, their own transition. But I just think it's immensely helpful, and that's what I've always heard from the veterans that end up attending our institutions, is how helpful those conversations have been. So sometimes you can find ways to do that on our websites. If you can't, just reach out to us. Again, we're happy to hear from you and to make those connections for you.
And my suggestion is for you to make a list of your top priorities in terms of what you're looking for in a college. Do you want to go to a local college, or can you move from California to Massachusetts and bring your family with you? Do you want to take classes part-time or full-time? Do you want a liberal arts education, or do you want a more conservatory style or pre-professional type of education? So you have all these choices. There are over 2,000 colleges in the United States. So to help you narrow it down, I think it's very important for you to first sort of look inward and determine what your priorities are. Alex?
Yeah, absolutely. All great advice. And I would say with that and with all the other information we've given you, think about what other colleges fit into those lists and sign up for mailing lists or make connections at other colleges. We all have counterparts at other institutions. These networks are great, as I said, especially Service to School through the VetLink program that will connect you with those individuals. So sign up for these as you can. But also, reach out to those colleges. Even sometimes it's just as easy on a website as, signing up for a mailing list the same way you did to register for this program. But also I would say, reach out to that individual office as well. And we've provided all of our contact information earlier on our individual slides and the joint slides as well. And if one of your top colleges includes one or more of the 5 of us, then we would love to hear from you if we haven't already. And even if we have already heard from you, continue the conversation and stay in touch, because we're here to help you, not just tonight, not just in watching the recording of the session or whatever, but as you navigate this process, whether it's this year, next year, or going forward, because things will adapt. We don't know how things may change with the current pandemic and the current situation, but we are so glad that with everything that's going on, that so many of you were able to join us tonight and spend some time with us and allow us to answer some of your questions. So we hope you're all staying well. We hope you're all staying safe. Thank you again for joining us. Have a wonderful Saturday evening, and we hope to hear from you again soon. Take care, everyone.